thinking about this journey for you, and I know you mentioned your parents, who I would assume maybe they've died by now. Just wondering about when you first got to bring this very deep learning and practice to a very intimate personal context of loss, and wondering what that was like, if it's worth sharing, like when your dad died or your mom died or a friend or a loved one. Is there a story to tell, that feels worthwhile?
There is. Let me say a couple of things first. One is, I just want to honor you and appreciate how vulnerable you're allowing yourself to be. And I've been on a lot of podcasts. I have my own podcast. I've interviewed people. I've been interviewed a lot. And you're the first person that interviewed me that's cried. I will say that. Right. And I think that's so sweet and so tender.
Thanks, Dale.
So anyway, uh, I helped both of my parents die. My father died first. I've been doing this work for, let's see, 80 cents, almost maybe 9 years before he died. And uh, the story goes, a few years before he died, I was in a car with my father. I'm up in the front seat, and my girlfriend at the time and my mother were in the back seat. It was a beautiful summer day out by Half Moon Bay. We were going to go out for seafood lunch somewhere. And I say to my dad, "Hey, Dad, next weekend I'm going to teach a workshop in Berkeley about conscious dying. You want to hear what I'm going to talk about?" And he said, "Isn't it a beautiful day today?" Apparently, he didn't want to talk about it.
It sounds like me and my dad talking. Sounds same conversation.
My dad both of my parents were Danish Lutheran, very loving, but a bit non-expressive. I'm not going to use the word repressed, but I almost did. Okay. So very wonderful people, very kind people. Fast forward, I'm in the hospital in Mountain View. My dad and my mom, I grew up in Los Altos, and my dad had metastatic prostate cancer. He was in El Camino Community Hospital, and he was about a week from being dead. And I was in the hospital with him, and he knew the work I did, but he never had wanted to talk about it, just like that conversation in the car, right? And I just had the intuitive impulse to say, "Hey, Dad, what do you think is going on for you right now?" And that is a really wonderful technique of asking people if they're ready to let you in, right? There's often an implicit contract between you and another person. If you're a therapist, they're paying you money. There's 50-minute hour. You're a professional person. That's what it is. But very often the contract is not very clear. And the contract between my dad and me was kind of like, I'm the dad and you're the son, and I love you, but I know way more than you do, so don't try to tell me anything. Kind of not quite that gross, but that was kind of the undertone to the whole
I'm
thing.
relating. Yeah.
So I said, "Hey, Dad, what do you think is going on?" And he paused for a second and he said, "I don't know. What do you think?" He invited me in. He invited me in for the first time. And I said, "Well, I hope I'm wrong, but it really seems to me from what I know medically is that you're dying." And he said, "That's the way it feels to me too." And that man and I had the most real conversation we'd ever had in our lives. And in that hour and a half, whatever it was, it went a long way in healing this father-son relationship that had been going on all of my life. And at the end of the conversation, he said, "Go home and tell your mother that I feel like I'm dying now and I want to talk to her about it." So I drove home 15 minutes to the family homestead there, and I said, "Mom, Dad feels like he's dying and wants to talk to you about it." And she said, "No, he doesn't."
In my experience, no way. No, he doesn't.
Right. And
Yeah.
I said, "Yes, he does. Get in the car." And I took her to the
Oh my
hospital,
gosh.
and they talked and they cried, and she climbed in bed with him, and they held each other, which might have happened otherwise, but I don't think so. Okay. So then 8 years later, my mother's dying, and she's in a kind of high-end retirement home in Cupertino. Uh, and she had metastatic pancreatic cancer. She died within 10 weeks of diagnosis, which is a perfect amount of time. You get to do all the closure. It's not so long you're
Oh
bankrupted
gosh,
or
Dale. I mean,
exhausted.
any like I just want to to say, because usually someone would say like pancreatic cancer and it was so quick, like that's what you hear, and it's happened to my loved ones, so quick. And I just am feeling so moved by you saying it was the perfect amount of time, you know.
Yeah, it gave us a chance to really know what was happening and be together, but not so long that it was like super
Mm.
expensive or emotionally totally exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Or like endless suffering for,
Yeah.
months or yeah.
Yeah, or for the person who's got the illness. So my mother had this, both of my parents really loved Jesus a lot. They were very religious in a good way people, right? And uh, neither of them seemed to be afraid of dying at all when the time came.
Mm.
So at that point, I had another girlfriend. She was a medical doctor, and we'd go and see my mom, and we'd like pinch her cheeks and slap her on the cheek. So when the nurse would come by to check on my mom, she'd have color in her cheeks. They didn't know she was dying, and she got to stay in independent living until 2 days before she died.
Wow.
And then the facility freaked out because they get in trouble if somebody dies at the wrong level of care. If you're dying in independent living from a progressive illness, then obviously they're not paying enough attention. She's
Yeah,
supposed to
right.
be across the street in the hospital.
Yeah, right.
So 2 days before she died, she was taken across the street to the hospital, and that was connected with the facility. And uh, I'm there with her in the room. I'm meditating, and she's just lying there being my mom and kind of off in Jesus land, whatever she was doing. And some woman pokes her head in the door and says, "Would Mrs. Borglum like her hair done today?" And I said, maybe come back next week. And the woman said, "Okay," but just that disturbance brought my mother out of that state.
Mm.
She started getting anxious. And I just did just a few moments of practice, the kind of this compassion practice for her, and she just settled back down in there again. A couple moments of Tonglen, she went right back in there, and I sat with her, and she died in the middle of the night, very beautifully.
Mm.
And I sat with her for a number of hours, and then I had to pee, and I went out in the hallway to go to the restroom out in the hallway, and a nurse said, "How's your mother doing?" I said, "Oh, she's great. She's dead now." And the nurse called the other nurse, and they all freaked out. They came running in,
Oh,
and they said, "Well, why didn't you tell us that she had died?" I said, "Because I knew you'd make a big fuss about
yeah,
it,
right.
right?" And I just wanted to give my mom a chance
Oh.
to have some calmness here. And we just sat together, and there was
Mm-hmm.
nothing you could have done other than, create a disturbance. So
Mm.
they were not entirely happy with that, but I didn't care.
Well, yeah,
And
just
so she got to
not up to
get
that.
out of there with some calmness and everything.
Mm.
And
Wow, Dale.
yeah, so that's how my two parents died.
Thank you for those stories. What are their names?
My dad's name was Don. That's his middle name. His first name, it's a kind of a complicated story, but his name was Gutzon Borglum. Gutzon Borglum is the guy that carved Mount Rushmore.
Mm.
And my name is Dale Gutzon Borglum. Gutzon means God's son in Danish, and it's the oldest son of the oldest son gets named that.
Okay. Yes. Right. So you're related to the Mount Rushmore
Yeah.
artist? Wow,
Uh,
that's a
uh,
wild thing to end on.
the
That's
guy who desecrated the mountain sacred to the Indians is my
yeah,
relative, yes.
yeah. Good. Thank you for naming that. A really great full circle moment, actually.
And my mother's name was Dagny.
Dagny.
Uh-huh. It's
Those
a
are really
Danish name too.
moving, sweet stories that matter a lot to me, especially your dad's story.